Oasis Audio presents The Mind of Terror by Tass Saada with Dean Merrill. Read for you by Marco Prentice. Part 1. Inside the Terrorist Mindset. Chapter 1. No Place to Hide. The moment the first plane hit the World Trade Center, I knew. Stunned eyewitnesses and newscasters wondered if there had been a terrible breakdown in air traffic control. But I knew, without a doubt, that radical Islam had come to the United States. For the previous 9 months, God had been impressing upon me that I should travel, share my testimony, and warn people that Islamic extremism was at our doorstep. I had spoken to large congregations and to small groups in living rooms. I have to admit that not many listeners took me seriously. Most thought it could never happen here. Then came September 11th. All the false security disappeared. Within hours, it became known that the hijackers were Middle Eastern Muslims. And here I was, an Arab living in the United States. If you think you were shocked and distraught that day, you should have been in my shoes. What will happen to us? I worried. How will this affect my wife, our 2 children? What do our friends think about us now? They all know that I come from a Muslim background. In fact, the FBI probably has that figured out too. For the next few days, I didn't want to talk to a lot of people. I was too angry and upset over how this would disrupt my life and the safety of my family. I secluded myself, just watching the non-stop news on TV. I couldn't figure out how to react, what to say. Near the end of that week, I had to go on a speaking trip, leaving my family at home in Northeast Missouri, where we served with Heartland Ministries, a Christian farm and school for troubled teens and adults with addiction issues. While I was away, sure enough, the FBI came knocking. Not finding me, the agent from nearby Kirksville interrogated Karen, my wife, and Farah, our 24-year-old daughter. He spent a half hour asking who I was, what I did, what my connections were. Then came the bombshell. "Mrs. Abu Saada, we've had a report that your husband is friends with Osama bin Laden." Karen gasped, then laughed nervously. "Really?" "Yes," the agent said soberly. "Is that true?" Karen shook her head and began to explain. "More than 35 years ago, when Tass was a boy, his father did business with Mohammed bin Laden, Osama's father, back in Saudi Arabia. Tass's father had an auto body repair shop, and he used to fix the bin Laden cars. So, yes, the boy came along to the shop one day, and they met. But that was all." The agent kept taking notes, then replied, "Okay, I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have to follow up on every lead we receive. Here's my card. Have your husband call me, please." Fear and trembling. We didn't know exactly which neighbor in the area had given the FBI this tip. But of course, I had told my life story to public audiences more than a few times. So I called the agent as requested. I said, "Hello, this is Tass Abu Saada. My wife said you wanted to hear from me." "Thank you for following up," he said in a polite manner. I figured I might as well confirm what he probably already knew. "Yes, it's true that I was born and raised in a Muslim family in the Middle East," I admitted. "Yes, I'm a former terrorist. I fought with Fatah, Yasser Arafat's militia, as a teenager. Yes, even before that, I met Osama bin Laden once in my father's garage when I was about 9 years old. Odd little kid, I thought. He hardly said a word. But can I claim today that I know him? That he's my friend? No way. It was a one-time encounter, and that's all." I took a breath, and then continued. "I came to this country in 1974, settled down, got a green card, got a job, got married, became a father. I'm as upset about what happened last week as any other American." "That's okay," the agent said. "I've been checking you out, and everything matches up. Don't worry. When you get back in the area, give me a call, and maybe we'll get together for a cup of coffee." Phew. That was nice to hear. But it didn't mean I could totally relax. I knew I was still being scrutinized by people on every side. 3 or 4 months later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line in the header caught my attention immediately. It read, "The time has come. It is ripe." And then there was a little icon of a bomb. Who sent this? And why did they send it to me? I didn't dare open the actual email. I picked up the phone and called my FBI contact. I read the subject line to him and then said, "Should I just delete this or what?" "Oh, no," he answered. "Let me look at it. I'll come over to see your computer for myself." Soon he and another agent showed up. He sat down at my computer and began pecking away. "Something is going on here," he said mysteriously. Then, finally, "I'm going to forward this to our lab for further analysis." I never did hear what, if anything, they concluded. I was left, like all other Americans, to wonder and wait. In the 15 years since then, terrorism has exploded across our world, and not just across the Middle East. An informal tally on Wikipedia for just 1 month, January 2015, counted 29 major incidents, from the Philippines to Libya to France to Nigeria. The next month, February, 13. The next month, March, 22. The next month, April, 20. The next month, May, 30. And on it goes. In other words, one outbreak at least every other day. Which attacks in this young century have been deadliest? Look at this table of blood.
Refer to the included PDF.
There may have been a time when comfortable Westerners living in North America and Europe could pretend the world had 2 categories: safe places and unsafe places. Certain cities and countries were all right for vacationing, while others were not. That myth was forever shattered on 9/11 when terror came to New York's financial district and Washington's military headquarters. The only reasonable conclusion since then has been that the entire globe contains no place to hide. The question, "Is it safe?" doesn't apply anymore. Many players. Keeping track of the many terrorist groups is not a simple task, especially with the constant mergers, split-offs, and name changes. The U.S. State Department keeps a formal list of foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs, that, at this writing, number 58. All the famous names are there, alongside many obscure ones you've probably never heard of. The British government keeps a similar list that's even longer, called Proscribed Terrorist Groups or Organizations. This roster contains 67 groups, plus another 14 that are particular to the Northern Ireland situation. An entire book could be written about each of the major players. But that is hardly our goal here. We already know, from the daily media, a great amount about them and what they do. Perhaps a way to keep this chapter's overview within bounds is to use the Forbes magazine list of the world's 10 richest terrorist organizations, money being a key indicator of any group's ability to impose its will. As you will quickly see, these are not just ragtag groups of outlaws running around in the shadows. These are sizable business operations. Number 1. Islamic State, acronym ISIS in English, Daesh in Arabic, and as many as 43 affiliates. Annual turnover, according to Forbes, $2 billion. Sources, oil sales, kidnapping, and ransom, collection of taxes and protection monies, bank robberies and looting. Estimated number of fighters, 30,000. Control so far, large swaths of Iraq and Syria. Goal, to destabilize Middle Eastern governments, erase the boundary lines of the current map, drawn mainly by the British after World War I, and set up a whole new caliphate across the region that implements true and faithful Islam. Most infamous for? Beheadings of Western journalists, Coptic Christians, and others. Crucifixions, stonings, burning victims alive. For example, a captured Jordanian pilot locked in an iron cage, January 2015. This group did not arise out of nowhere. It was previously Al-Qaeda in Iraq, until it splashed into the world's headlines in mid-2014. Its brutality is not accidental. It is meant to shock the West, and at the same time, to strike fear into the hearts of local people and governments. This is ISIS's conscious strategy for destroying the current order and setting up a return to Islamic purity. ISIS has openly declared that it is not fighting against Israel. For now. What that means is the present problem is not Israel. Rather, it is Arab disunity. ISIS disdains the current Arab kings and presidents, considering them apostates, reprobates, and sellouts for their cooperation with the West, enriching only themselves. Once ISIS turns the Arab peoples into a new entity, perhaps the United Arab States, UAS, like USA, it will then be positioned to go after Israel and its rich friends in the West, Great Britain, the United States, and others. In fact, we are already seeing ISIS fighters slipping into the throngs of desperate Syrian refugees fleeing toward Europe. For further information, see the 32-page special report, The Islamic State, posted online by the Clarion Project, or read Graham Wood's in-depth article, What ISIS Really Wants, published in The Atlantic, March 2015. Number 2. Hamas. Annual turnover, $1 billion. Sources, taxes and fees, strong-arm businesses, anything from banks to fish farms, financial aid and donations, especially from the wealthy Gulf states of Qatar as well as Iran. Control, currently just the Gaza Strip, 139 square miles. Goal, to dislodge Israel so that a Palestinian state can stretch from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River. Most infamous for, rocket attacks into southern Israel. Hamas started out innocently enough as a humanitarian aid organization and, you won't believe this, was legally registered as such in Israel in 1978. The Israelis apparently reasoned that if Palestinians received better health care, schools, and other civic services, their allegiance would turn away from Yasser Arafat and Fatah. But when the outside world powers pressured Israel to negotiate with Arafat, Hamas was left out in the cold. It became more violent and hostile than Israel had ever expected. Hamas's position is now officially on record as no solution for the Palestine question except through jihad, which it pursues to this day. My wife and I moved into the Gaza Strip in 2006 to open an oasis of calm and love for innocent kindergarten children. We rented a building, found staff to hire, and got off to a good start with 60 students that first school year. But when Hamas won the local election of June 2007, it drove out the al-Fatah forces and soon came to ransack our building. We had no choice but to shut down. Number 3. FARC. Translates as Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Annual turnover, $600 million. Sources, drug processing and trafficking, half the world's cocaine. Kidnapping and ransom, mining of minerals, particularly gold. Control, about 30% of Colombian territory. Goal, to overthrow capitalism in Colombia and replace it with a Marxist socialist government.